Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Templeton Prize ceremony. Please welcome Shaykh Hamza Yusuf and Professor Miroslav Volf. Now please welcome the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency António Guterres. And now, please welcome to the stage the 2018 Templeton Prize Laureate, His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, and the President of the John Templeton Foundation, Heather Templeton Dill.
Good evening. My name is Randy Hollerith. I am the Dean of Washington National Cathedral, and it is my joy to welcome you all this evening, especially to His Majesty King Abdullah, the Secretary General Guterres. We are so honored to have you with us today, and we are grateful to Heather Templeton Dill and to the trustees of the John Templeton Foundation for the opportunity to host this evening's ceremony. On behalf of Bishop Buddy of the Diocese of Washington and all the clergy and staff of this cathedral, please know that you are always welcome at this house of prayer for all people. This cathedral has four main priorities. One, to welcome all those who step within our doors. Two, to deepen relationships with God and with one another. Three, to serve all of God's children by working for social justice. And four, to convene conversations around the most important topics in our common life. Your Majesty, you too have welcomed all sides to the table. You have convened princes, presidents, and prime ministers in the quest for peace. Your efforts have deepened interfaith relationships, and in doing all of that, you have served humanity and our Creator. At the rear of this cathedral is a statue of Abraham Lincoln. And in 1865, Lincoln reminded us that God's work must truly be our own. The struggle for peace and mutual understanding is indeed God's work, and His Majesty has shown each of us how to truly make it our own. And so, Your Majesty, thank you for your tireless work for peace. To the John Templeton Foundation and the Templeton Prize, thank you for reminding us of the things that matter most. And to all of you, thank you for your presence here tonight. God bless you.
Your Majesty, Your Excellency, distinguished Excellencies and guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am Heather Templeton Dill, the President of the John Templeton Foundation. On behalf of the trustees of the John Templeton Foundation, I welcome all of you to the Templeton Prize ceremony, honoring the 2018 laureate, His Majesty King Abdullah II ibn al-Hussein. Dean Hollerith, thank you for your beautiful introduction. And thank you for allowing the John Templeton Foundation the opportunity to present this ceremony here in the majestic Washington National Cathedral, a house of prayer for all people. It is also with great joy that we welcome to our stage His Excellency António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. Your Excellency, thank you very much for being here with us this evening. I would like to say a few words about the man whose vision has brought us here tonight, our founder, Sir John Templeton. Sir John established the Templeton Prize in 1972. It is a prize that is given annually to an individual who has made an exceptional contribution to recognizing and affirming life's spiritual dimension. Sir John created this prize because he believed that religion is important and underappreciated in the affairs of humankind. And he wanted to honor those who were making significant contributions to human flourishing that spring from deeply held religious convictions. Sir John Templeton was a financier who pioneered global investing and created some of the world's most successful mutual funds because he looked outside of the United States for investment opportunities. He was tenacious, bold, and open to new ideas. Yet he also embodied a spirit of curiosity and open-mindedness that extended far beyond the realm of business. Is it possible, he wondered, that there are some spiritual principles on which all major religions already agree? Can love and the vastness of divinity reduce our differences? In asking these questions, however, he did not shy away from drawing conclusions. The real wealth of a nation, he wrote, does not come from mineral resources, but from the way it develops and harnesses love in the minds and hearts of its people. We might easily dismiss this idea. Does love really make a difference in human affairs? Can love really be the bridge between religious traditions? But tonight, we recognize His Majesty's efforts to promote peace and harmony among Muslims and between Muslims and Christians based on the twin commandments shared by both faiths, love of God and love of the neighbor. The Emanne message, the Common Word, and the United Nations Interfaith Harmony Week stress the moral imperative of understanding the values of peace inherent in all religions. We at the John Templeton Foundation cannot think of a more important message of peace and reconciliation for the world to hear and embrace in the 21st century. And that is why the Templeton Prize exists, to celebrate the deep and enduring significance of religion and the values that it promotes. His Majesty, King Abdullah II, is a person shaped by temporal and political responsibilities, yet one who holds the conviction that religious belief and the free exercise of religion are among humankind's most important callings. In his letter endorsing King Abdullah II's nomination for the prize, the Very Reverend Professor Ian R. Torrance said, "The immensely important work of King Abdullah II lies in his decisive leadership and convening authority in worldwide Islam to call a halt to sectarianism and to mutual denunciation. Through scholarship, example, encouragement, and publication, King Abdullah has offered the inherently flexible structures of Islam space to reset and look again at matters of justice, interfaith relations, and neighborliness. In this way, His Majesty embodies the values that inspired my grandfather to establish the Templeton Prize and the John Templeton Foundation. And it is a great joy to celebrate His Majesty's contributions in this ceremony. This evening, I am pleased to introduce two scholars who will offer their insights on the importance and influence of the work of King Abdullah II. We will hear from each of them in the course of the program, and in lieu of introductions when they come forward to speak, I would like to introduce them now. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf is president of Zaytuna College in Berkeley, California, America's first accredited Muslim liberal arts college. A philosopher, theologian, public intellectual, and widely sought-after speaker, he is, according to The New Yorker, perhaps the most influential Islamic scholar in the Western world. A convert to Islam at 17, Dr. Yusuf is on the list of the 500 most influential Muslims. He advises Islamic study centers, leaders, and heads of states across the globe, and his influence on a generation of Islamic scholars has been transformative. Professor Miroslav Volf is the Henry B. Wright Professor of Theology at Yale University and the founder and director of the Yale Center for Faith and Culture. In October 2007, he was the lead author of the Christian response to A Common Word Between Us and You, the historic open letter signed by 138 Muslim scholars, clerics, and intellectuals, which identified some core common ground at the heart of the Christian and Muslim faiths. His most recent book is Flourishing: Why We Need Religion in a Globalized World. We will also be treated this evening to performances from some of Jordan's most popular and esteemed musical artists, vocalists Zain Awad and Emanne Beasha, the Dozan wa Awtar Choir, and Jordan's National Music Conservatory Orchestra, all under the direction of producer and pianist Talal Abu Al Ragheb. And finally, we welcome again His Excellency António Guterres, the 9th Secretary General of the United Nations, who took office on January 1st, 2017. Prior to his appointment as Secretary General, Mr. Guterres served as United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees from June 2005 to December 2015, heading one of the world's foremost humanitarian organizations during some of the most serious displacement crises in decades. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you all for joining us this evening to celebrate and honor His Majesty, King Abdullah II.
Your Majesty, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, through the universal language of music, we bring you a portrait of Jordan, a young nation steeped in history. Through music by Talal Abu Al Ragheb, vocals by Emanne Beasha, and visuals from around Jordan, Farasa weaves the story of our nation, its ancient history, its picturesque landscapes, its embrace of old and new, and its harmony. This is our Jordan, the land of faith, the land of fellowship, the land of promise.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Your Majesty, Your Excellency, Secretary General, Miss Heather Temple Dill, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored here. I first want to thank Miss Heather Templeton Dill and the John Temple Foundation for the honor of paying homage to somebody I truly respect, King Abdullah II of Jordan. I believe Miss Templeton Dill's grandfather, Sir John Templeton, would consider this year's recipient of his esteemed prize an altogether fitting one. Sir John, a true visionary, understood the great moral burden that comes with privilege. Unfortunately, the current zeitgeist too often scorns privilege and fails to recognize that not only is privilege a natural part of our world, but that it always entails an attendant social responsibility. The Quran reminds us that we have privileged some of you over others in order to test you to see which of you is the best in action. Sir John used his immense privilege in response to that test to encourage others to do their utmost for the good of humanity. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The best of you in the eyes of God are the most beneficial to God's dependents." Tonight, we honor someone of rare privilege, a king no less, yet who has used his privilege and prestige, like his remarkable father before him, King Hussein, in service of his fellow countrymen, his neighbors, both near and distant. The Arabs say, "Ash-shay'u min ma'danihi la yustaghrab," that something from its source should cause no surprise. King Abdullah hails from the illustrious Hashemite clan, whose family line, replete with prophets, peacemakers, and philanthropists, goes back to the eponymous father of the three Abrahamic faiths. Abraham pitched a grand tent in which all were welcome, and his two great sons, Ishmael and Isaac, generated the two great Semitic branches, the Jews and the Arabs. King Abdullah's work, above and beyond his duties as head of state, has helped to restore that resplendent Abrahamic tent where all are welcome as guests of God. The great Muslim poet of Persia from the 14th century, Hafiz, wrote, "If God had invited you to a party and said, 'Everyone in the ballroom tonight will be my special guest,' how would you treat them when you arrived?" Hafiz knows there is no one in this world who is not upon God's bejeweled dance floor. A quintessential teaching of the three great sons of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, calls upon us to see the imago Dei in one another. The Quran states, "And in your own selves, don't you see?" In seeing the ennobling hand of the divine in all God's earthly creatures, we honor the one who created them. That teaching has informed the major initiatives of King Abdullah for the promotion of peace. We live in a world characterized by far too much misunderstanding and riven by too many misgotten wars and revolutions. So the tireless efforts of a leader like King Abdullah in the service of peace, empathy, and understanding must be honored and celebrated as we're doing tonight. In a region mired in a miasma of constant crises and in an era of spiritual, intellectual, and political decline, he has waged a battle of the heart, deploying the weapons of generosity, courage, and wisdom. Faced with the scourge of extremism, militarism, and religious fanaticism, he is countered with moderation, concordance, and reason in his efforts to restore the prophetic way of Muhammad, who said, "Beware of extremism, for it is that which destroyed the previous peoples." During the holy month of Ramadan in 2004, King Abdullah issued the Emanne message, reminding his fellow Muslims of Islam's great tradition of religious pluralism, compassion, and tolerance, as well as its art of the courtesies of differing. Vestiges of that great tradition still survive in places like Jordan, Malaysia, Turkey, the Emirates, Oman, Morocco, and others, where Muslims and Christians, Jews and Jains, Buddhists and Hindus, humanists and secularists are treated with the dignity deserving of all God's guests. In 2006, with increasing tensions and flare-ups between Muslims and Christians, King Abdullah launched a common word between us and you, an open letter from Muslim leaders to the leaders of the Christian faith, once again King Abdullah was reminding fellow Muslims and informing fellow Christians who might be unaware that the world's 1.8 billion Muslims are members of the Abrahamic family. And the Quran commands them to respect the other family members, to protect them when they are threatened, and to honor them when safe. We have a shared faith in all the biblical prophets, the messianic reality of Jesus, his virgin birth, not to mention a firm belief in the afterlife of final judgment with its rewards and retributions. In 2010, King Abdullah used his pulpit as a head of state at the United Nations to call for a World Interfaith Harmony Week, expanding love of God by adding love of the good and love of one's neighbor, promoting harmony among all people, regardless of their faith in God or lack thereof. The tie that binds all of King Abdullah's work stems from his deeply dyed spirituality and a Muslim faith that connects love of God to love of his creation. This was perfectly articulated by the 13th century theologian Fakhruddin al-Razi, who said all of Islam can be reduced to two principles: devotion to the Creator and mercy towards God's creation. This reflects also the message of Moses, so perfectly summed up by the great Rabbi Hillel, who said that the whole of the Torah, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow men. That is the whole of the Torah. The rest is explanation. Go and learn. Christ, too, masterfully reduced the 10 commandments to 2. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy mind. And thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all of the law and the prophets. Our Prophet Muhammad added to that, none of you truly believes until he loves for others what he loves for himself. The way of the Golden Rule honors the imago Dei in each human person. My own teacher, Shaykh Abdullah bin Beasha, who was honored by King Abdullah, said, we don't want a world where Muslims feel safe and others don't. We want a world where everyone feels safe. This is the faith of the Prophet Muhammad, who said, a believer is one whom all people feel safe from his tongue and his hand. This means regardless of their color, creed, or clan. King Abdullah's magnanimous efforts exemplify that path. Lest we forget, we should note that his country, Jordan, despite its limited resources, has taken in at immense expense over 2 million refugees and provided them a haven from the horrors of war. With majestic finesse and adroitness, he continues to navigate the rough waters of a militarized region too often engulfed in wars and surrounded by rumors of wars. His leadership displays courage and principle. The Arabs say, and they really do say many wise things, the camel is honored by God and the donkey is censured. Both are mentioned in the Quran. For the simple reason that the camel, with head raised high, looks to the horizon, while the hapless, downcast donkey can't see beyond its own hooves. King Abdullah, while rooted in a glorious past, looks to the horizon of the future with hope and imagination. Now, in reflecting on this, I think I've discovered one of the reasons that he's able to do that. King Abdullah is a Trekkie. Hence, his enterprises make it easy to go boldly where no leader has gone before. An interesting fact about the Middle East, Star Trek is not popular in the region, and Arab countries have yet to produce science fiction programs. The content of the future does not come easily for many Muslims, many of whom prefer to look nostalgically to the past, long lost, instead of a future waiting to be found. King Abdullah looks upon the ascending light of dawn and calls others to expect a sublime sunrise that will restore light amidst the darkness, hope amidst the despair, and reconciliation amidst the conflict. I want to conclude by citing the great American Orientalist Duncan MacDonald, whose legacy remains honored at the Hartford Seminary. He wrote over 100 years ago and before Samuel Huntington, Islam is a present reality, and the Muslim faith a living organism, a knowledge of whose laws may be of life or death for those of us in another camp. For there can be little doubt that the three great antagonistic and militant civilizations of the world are those of Christendom, Islam, and China. When these are unified or come to a mutual understanding, then and only then will the cause of civilization be secure. King Abdullah has done more than his own part toward that end. As a man of hefty prestige and a weighty privilege, he has shouldered his moral burden admirably and continues his efforts to secure a future of peace and prosperity, not only for people of his country, but for the people of the world, guided by his unshakable commitment to love God and serve God's creation. May God bless the Templeton Foundation for the wisdom to recognize and honor this humble grandson of a prophet, a visionary, a peacemaker, and in the fine words of Sir John Templeton himself, an honest spiritual entrepreneur. Thank you.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, none of you has faith until you love for your neighbor what you love for yourself. All my life, every day, I have heard and used the greetings, Assalamu alaikum, a wish for the other to be blessed with peace.
Jordan is a Muslim country with a deep-rooted Christian community that dates back, a couple of thousand years.
We were never raised up to be a disconnected country, a country that wants to live alone.
The king, being a Hashemite, has a particular standing in this because of the fact that he is of the Prophet's family.
The Hashemites trace their lineage directly to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, peace be upon him. This gives them the legitimacy, the credentials that are required to initiate dialogue between civilizations and religions.
Jordan's not a big country, but its leaders have been big leaders with a big vision. King Hussein, now King Abdullah, have been open to dialogue with their neighbors and with the rest of the world, and in so doing have become great emissaries not just for Jordan but for Islam.
It was Zarqawi, of course, his group, who were responsible for the bombings, and he exemplified a particularly savage turn in the Takfiri jihad inside Iraq. But he also wanted to spread this more widely around the region, which is the point of the hotel bombings in Jordan. I think he wanted to destabilize Jordan in the way that he thought he was destabilizing Iraq.
This was not the first time that Jordan was the target of terrorism, but perhaps this was the first time that we faced the new face of this radicalized ideology. And His Majesty, the King, felt that he needed to do something.
كنا بالعالم بوضع حرب بين الاعتدال والتطرف بكل دول العالم، لأنه اليوم عندنا حرب أهلية داخل الإسلام. للأسف بجوز الدول العربية ونحن كعرب ومسلمين لحد الآن مش حاسين إنه هيك الوضع، لكن حرب الأمني بيجي بتاخدنا 5 إلى 10. الحرب الأيديولوجي راح تاخدنا وقت.
So events after 2001 sent the world system reeling. You had the 9/11 attacks, obviously. You had the 7/7 bombings. You had the Madrid train bombings. You had the Afghanistan war. You had the Iraq war. King Abdullah recognizes that Muslims themselves need to have a conversation about what's actually happening here. And that process culminates in the Emanne message.
The Emanne message was the first attempt to bring together a set of established Islamic scholars and Islamic scholarly institutions around the world.
في محاور الرسالة خاطبت الناس جميعاً، وبالتالي بيّنت أن الله تعالى جعل للإنسان كرامة. ماذا يعني الإسلام؟ عدم جواز تكفير الآخر. الإسلام انبنى على التعددية، على التسامح، على احترام الآخر، إلى غير ذلك من المحاور التي وردت في هذه الرسالة.
I think it is something you need to build on. I mean, this is not something that can stand still.
It requires education, it requires enlightenment, it requires revision of our understanding of our religious values, of our religious teachings.
لكن قد يكون هناك عبء كبير جدا على مسألة المسجد والفتوى بالذات في رسم معالم الثقافة الإسلامية المعتدلة. يمكن لأئمة المساجد أن يقدموا هذا الخطاب.
So the Emanne message is a dialogue aimed at Muslims, by Muslims, for Muslims, about their religion, but you have this concurrent rise of tensions between the global Muslim community and the global Christian community. And sensing this, King Abdullah launched the Common Word Initiative.
His Majesty invited 138 Muslim scholars from the different sects. They addressed the Christian world that the core of religion is loving God and loving the neighbor.
If you begin a dialogue by understanding that we have some first principles in common, love God, love your neighbor, then you can go on to a dialogue about the issues that divide you, understanding that the result is not that you suddenly agree on everything, but that you treat each other with respect.
فإنني أدعوكم إلى تعزيز مسيرة الحوار بين الأديان والتركيز على تعظيم الجوامع المشتركة بين أتباع الديانات والمذاهب.
عشان هيك رسالة عمان هي مش بس توضيح الإسلام، ولكن هي كمان رسالة اللي بتفرجي كيف نحن عايشين في الأردن.
What His Majesty always talks about is if you want to reclaim a narrative, you have to put yourself out there. You have to do it online, you have to do it offline, you have to do it by leading by example.
For the king, managing these stresses, managing these conflicts, and coming through with such resilience has been one of the most remarkable achievements of the modern Middle East.
The values we share, equality, compassion, hope, need to be connected to everything we do. And we must keep ourselves connected to each other for the good of all.
Your Majesty King Abdullah, Your Excellency General Secretary Guterres, President Templeton Dill, esteemed guests and dear friends. As we have just been reminded, the accomplishments in the domain of religion which His Majesty has spearheaded are many and they're weighty. I will extol the virtues only of one, the one I know the best. 9/11 threw the relations between Christians and Muslims into a tailspin. 4 years later, they were at a historic low. The Iraq War was spreading death and desolation and stoking suppressed anger of many Muslims. With the publication of Danish cartoons in 2002, that anger burst into open. Kofi Annan, then Secretary General of the UN, had to intervene. A year later, in a lecture, the leader of 1.3 billion Christians, Pope Benedict XVI, seemed to put the cartoons into words, as one Muslim critic put it. He quoted an ancient Byzantine emperor who said, "Show me just what Muhammad brought that was new, and there you will find only evil and things and inhuman, such as his command to spread by the sword the faith he preached." The reaction of the Muslim street to their speech was swift and in many places extremely violent. At the beginning of the third millennium, Muslims and Christians had concocted together a poisonous brew of misunderstanding, recrimination, and outright violence. It took a bold vision and a deep knowledge of religion to chart a road out of the confrontation. It took political courage and diplomatic skill to get some 150 of the most prominent Muslim religious leaders to start walking on that road. With a single short text, today's honoree and his team accomplished this extraordinary feat. I'm referring to a common word between us and you. 2 days before its official release, my friend Tim Collins sent me an embargoed copy. As I read it deep into the night, I remember the speech I gave at the UN. It was on reconciliation, and in that speech I quoted the line from Paul Celan's poem Death Fugue about inmates of the extermination camps being given a grave in the clouds. The date of that speech was 9/11/2001. By the time I ended that speech, the smoke was billowing from the first of the Twin Towers, and very soon we were ushered out of the building. With the memory of this in mind, I decided on the spot to write a response to the text I was reading. Together with a team at the Yale Center for Faith and Culture, we produced what became known as a Yale Response, endorsed by hundreds of the most prominent Christians from around the world. This was one of the first bridges from the Christian side that the Common Word inspired. Countless others followed. A key concern of the Common Word was to change the way Muslims and Christians engage one another. The title of the document sums up the character of that change. It is taken directly from the Quran, from the verse which reads, "O people of the book, come to a common word between us and you." Instead of hurling threats, the document issues an invitation. Instead of keeping the two sides at an angry distance, us versus them, it seeks direct engagement, us and you. Instead of shaking fists, it proposes a truth-seeking dialogue, a common word. Instead of recounting incompatible differences and past injustices, it zeroes in on commonalities without compromising identities, a common word. Underlying the approach was a fundamental conviction. The only instrument powerful enough to resolve conflicts between Muslims and Christians are seemingly impotent and ineffectual words. Weapons, though sometimes unavoidable and necessary, are inadequate. The invitation to a truth-seeking dialogue was crucial to the document, but its genius lies elsewhere. After all, dialogues are ubiquitous, and they aren't new. After the fall of Constantinople in 1453, the fear of Ottoman armies gripped the entirety of Europe. As Pope Pius II was busily planning a new crusade, his close friend and one of the greatest Christian minds of all times, Cardinal Nicholas of Cusa, was trying to persuade him that the dialogue was better than crusade. But dialogue about what? The main argument of the common word is that what binds both faiths together is what matters the most to each, the command to love God and neighbor. The simple and brilliant suggestion was to place what is at the center of the two religions at the center of the dialogue between them. Informed by the joint struggle to understand what love of God and neighbor means for each, they can then grapple with thorny issues of their mutual relations, including such deep disagreements as ones about evangelism, religious freedoms, or blasphemy that continue to cause great suffering. A decade ago, Common Word addressed one of the great religious clashes of our time, potentially involving almost half of the human race. The focus of today's major global tensions is not religion, but I suggest nation. Nationalisms are surging across the globe. Not long ago, nationalism seemed a marginal phenomenon, a passing reaction to the pace and cruelty of globalization. It is now the main alternative to today's unsustainable global arrangements. Nationalists are deeply misguided patriots. They're not satisfied with love for their own nation in community of all nations. They extol the superiority of their own tribe. They scorn universal moral commitments while doggedly pursuing self-interest alone, and they insist on being an international exception. Such nationalism is one of the most dangerous forces in the world. With its stress on love of God and neighbor, a common word has acquired new relevance in an age of colliding nationalisms. First, to make love of God and love of neighbor one's highest value is to embrace a pan-human, universal creed. By definition, the one God is the God of the whole humanity, and the neighbor creation of that one God can be any human being anywhere. Second, love of God and neighbor are sources of meaning deeper than basking in national glory and wallowing in economic prosperity. By themselves, wealth and glory are empty goals. The more they matter to us, the emptier we become. The great and largely unrecognized challenge of our time is forgetfulness of what matters the most and chasing after what empties us of true humanity. For centuries, the question of true life was the heartbeat of great religious and philosophical tradition. And yet today, we are too busy acquiring resources for life, things like money, skills, and fame, to pay attention to the purposes of our lives. We are like a painter who obsesses so much about his tools that he never comes to his main job, which is to paint. Faced with global threats and with the unbearable lightness of our own being, we urgently need to revive a truth-seeking conversation about what matters the most. The issue is personal. At stake is the significance of our own lives. The issue is also political. At stake is the future of humanity. Your Majesty, with a common word, you have proclaimed powerfully the truth which none of us should ever forget. Truth-seeking conversations about what matters the most are not an expandable local luxury. They are a global necessity. Without them, we, diverse citizens of the blue planet and creatures of the one God, won't be able to walk with confidence into our own common human future. All of us who care not just for the peaceful relations between religions, but about the shape of our very humanity, are indebted deeply to your work. Thank you very much.
Since Jordan's establishment nearly a century ago, much has changed. But Jordanian hospitality, solidarity, and compassion have remained the same. Throughout our history, Jordanians have always welcomed guests with open arms, never turning away those in need of safe haven. Mahla Dar, a piece from Jordanian folklore, performed by Zain Awad, with Dozan Awtar singers, the National Music Conservatory Orchestra, and conducted by Mohammed Uthman, is a celebration of Jordan's traditions of solidarity and hospitality.
هب الشوق ما عدلي بالغربة قعود شو مشتاق يرويني بريق الفخار محلى فرح ديرتنا والسحجة صف والزينات بتغني وترقص عالدف والشباب فرحان تلوح بالكف والدبكات يحليها صوت المزمار محلى ربوع هالخضرة وزهر الربوات والزيتون والقعد بكل الفيات نبع الدوار والزينات عالنبع يملين جرار هب الشوق ما عدلي بالغربة قعود شو مشتاق يرويني بريق الفخار
Your Majesty, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, there are many things a Secretary General of the United Nations does because he is forced to do so. They come with a job. But fortunately, there are some that I can do with real joy and enthusiasm. And one of them is to be here in this evening, in this wonderful cathedral, and to pay tribute to King Abdullah, the outstanding statesman, the messenger for peace, and if Your Majesty allows me to say so, a very dear friend. And in this world where we see, unfortunately, proliferating both hatred and chaos, there are a few pillars of wisdom and compassion. And one of the most solid of these pillars is the awardee of this year's Templeton Prize. And so it is a great honor for me to be here this evening to pay tribute to His Majesty King Abdullah, because for those like me that know him, this honor comes as no surprise. No one better than King Abdullah deserves to receive this very renowned award. Many previous Templeton Prize winners have been ordered for their work to reconcile belief in God with scientific and mathematical inquiry. As an engineer by training and a man of faith, I have never seen any contradiction between these two essential elements of the human experience. But His Majesty brings is faced to bear in a completely different arena: political leadership and global diplomacy. The successful conduct of international affairs depends on seeking common ground and unifying principles. And as King Abdullah well understands, these are to be found principally in the values that bind us as members of one human family, which means in our spirituality and in all the great world religions. Faith is too often used to divide us, but it should provide pathways for people to come together in their diversity. By seeking religious harmony and understanding within Islam and between Islam and other religions, His Majesty has courageously demonstrated that belief in a power greater than ourselves can bridge differences, create unity, and contribute to peace, stability, and security. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, King Abdullah's promotion of peace within Islam and between Muslims of people and other beliefs has contributed to global peace and progress in many ways in our world. We had very important references tonight to the Emanne message of 2004. It was a remarkable initiative that King Abdullah initiated in an expression of unity, mutual respect and brotherhood between all Muslims, and the message of good news, friendship and hope to the world. It sets out the values of compassion, mercy, respect for others and freedom of belief, and as principles that define Muslims and their communities. And its affirmation that terrorism and violence have no place in Islam was a timely and welcome effort to prevent the escalation of sectarian tensions, as it was already referred tonight. And King Abdullah's support for scholarship initiatives, including the Royal Al Bayt Institute for Islamic Thought, has also fostered mutual understanding and cooperation among Muslims. The Common Word Initiative, also referred several times this evening, the Common Word Initiative, launched by His Majesty in 2007, aimed to ease tensions between Muslims and Christians based on the values common to both religions. Values that were also reminded us several times tonight: love of God and love of neighbor. And King Abdullah's proposal for World Interfaith Harmony Week was unanimously adopted and is now observed every year around the world. The King's family, the Hashemites, are directly descended from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and have a long history of respect for other faiths. This outstanding family, in recent times, has been the custodian of both Muslim and Christian religious sites in Jerusalem. And the King has continued this tradition in many ways, from funding the construction of Christian churches on the east bank of the River Jordan, to supporting Christians threatened by Daesh in Iraq and Syria. Not to mention the millions of Palestine refugees. Jordan has received about 1 million of Syrian refugees and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi refugees, with a generosity that should be referred today in a world where, unfortunately, refugees are so many times forgotten or even hostilized. And I have to confess to all of you one thing. I was High Commissioner for Refugees, and many times I went to Jordan. Jordan was paying an enormous price because of the Syrian conflict, a price because of the direct impact of the war in the security of the country, but also because of the overwhelming presence of a number of refugees that represented an enormous portion of the population of the country. But as High Commissioner for Refugees, I had the obligation to go and to ask the government of Jordan the impossible, even more. And sometimes the government would tell me, look, it's not possible, really, we cannot do more. And then I would visit Your Majesty, and the impossible would become a reality. You have been an extraordinary symbol of generosity and solidarity in today's world. And this is something I will never forget, because I lived in some of the most difficult and emotional moments of my life. And I know that that generosity was inspired both by your Muslim faith and by your solidarity with all fellow women and men. King Abdullah's investment in humanism and solidarity has always been apparent in his championing of young people in Jordan, at the United Nations and around the world. He has taken the lead in showing young people that they are valued, they are important, and they are respected. This is part of His Majesty's broader efforts to foster freedom of belief and social cohesion, mutual respect, inclusion, and hope. King Abdullah has acted upon his responsibility to address the root causes that can undermine social cohesion and create the conditions in which extremism can flourish. He has demonstrated what true leadership looks like in our times and for our world. Dear friends, we face deep insecurity and instability in many parts of the world. Societies are divided. Racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia are on the rise. The great monotheistic religions have contributed so much to enrich our world and global civilization, and it puts great value on solidarity and humanity. We cannot stand by as they are pitted against each other to further political agendas of dominance and intimidation. King Abdullah's leadership, based on love of God and love of one's neighbor, is an important antidote that resonates everywhere, from communities to societies to the international arena. And let me be clear, his message is not about tolerance, because tolerance is not enough. King Abdullah calls us to do far more than tolerate each other. His message is one of respect, solidarity, and love. And I hope this celebrated award will help to spread that message of respect, solidarity, and love even more widely. Your Majesty, I congratulate you on this prize and wish you all success in all your future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, would you please join me at the front of the stage for the presentation of the Templeton Prize? There are two components to the Templeton Prize. The first component is this beautiful scroll. We have inscribed your name on this scroll as the recipient of the 2018 Templeton Prize. And we have briefly noted that you are receiving this prize because of your leadership and your commitment to interfaith and intrafaith dialogue and friendship. We have also adorned the scroll with images and pictures that represent you and your contributions. This crown represents the Hashemite royal family of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And the King's Academy coat of arms represents your Majesty's commitment to education and enlightenment. There are three symbols that represent Jordan: the Jordanian flag, the black iris, which is the national flower of Jordan, and the swallow, which is a bird that flocks to Jordan every winter from all over the world. We have included the seven-pointed star. This image represents the Emanne message, and this image represents the common word, which are just two of the initiatives for which you are being recognized. I would now like to present you with the Tree of Life Medal. Step over here. The Tree of Life Medal represents the depth and the breadth of the Templeton Prize. In that regard, it represents the depth and breadth and significance of your contributions. On behalf of the trustees of the John Templeton Foundation and the judges of the Templeton Prize, I present you with the Tree of Life Medal, and I congratulate you on being recognized as the 2018 Templeton Prize Laureate. Congratulations. You're welcome. Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, thank you all. But I must begin today with a word about those who are highest in my mind today, the Jordanian families who are suffering and grieving in the aftermath of horrific flash flooding in my country. There are no words strong enough to express my sorrow, the sorrow of all Jordanians for the human loss caused by the double natural disasters just weeks apart. And I want to commend to the world the Jordanians who raced to respond, the neighbors and medical teams and rescue units. Truly, in facing tragedy, whether the deadly floods that struck Jordan or the deadly wildfires that struck California, we are, all of us, bound together in brotherhood. For the victims and their families in Jordan and in California, I ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Dean Hollerith, thank you for your warm welcome to the Washington National Cathedral. Shaykh Hamza, first of all, and my friend, dear friend, Secretary General, thank you for your very, very generous words. And a heartfelt thanks to Heather Templeton Dill and the entire Templeton family and foundation. May God reward the late Sir John for his tremendous legacy in affirming life's spiritual dimension and upholding positive values worldwide. I truly wish I had met Sir John in person, but meeting his family who are carrying on his work is meeting the best of what he stood for. And today I am truly humbled to be recognized by all of you. But let me say, everything you honor me for simply carries onward what Jordanians have always done and how Jordanians have always lived in mutual kindness, harmony, and brotherhood. And so I accept this extraordinary prize, not on my own behalf, but on behalf of all Jordanians. My friends, our country has long upheld religious mutual respect. The 5 prophets of great resolve, as they are called in the Quran, prophets of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, peace be upon them all, have blessed our land with their presence. Noah has a tomb in Karak. Abraham came through from the land of what is now Iraq on his way to Hebron. Moses died in Jordan on Mount Nebo. Jesus Christ, the Messiah, was baptized in Jordan on the east bank of the River Jordan by John the Baptist. And my country preserves this special site and others with great care, welcoming Christian pilgrims and other visitors from around the world. The Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, came to Jordan twice, once with his uncle as a boy, when he was witnessed by a Byzantine priest as a future prophet, and then later as a young merchant. It was that first encounter under a tree, which is still present in the Jordanian desert, that set the tone for Muslim-Christian coexistence and harmony in Jordan. My friends, these prophets of great resolve were on a journey, an internal journey of the self to fulfill God's commands. And the first step of any such journey begins with the struggle, the jihad within each of us to be the best person we can be. The greater jihad of the great prophets brought illumination to all of us. So here at this cathedral, as a Muslim, I'd like to say a word about jihad. And I'm sure that's not something you hear too often within these walls. But nothing is more important to understand. The greater jihad has nothing to do with the hate-filled fiction promoted by the Khawarij, the outlaws of Islam, such as Daesh and the like, or the Islamophobes, who also distort our religion. It is instead the personal internal struggle to defeat the ego and the struggle we all share for a world of peace, harmony, and love. As has been said in Islam, to love God and love one's neighbor are core commandments. And as Shaykh Hamza noted, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, none of you has faith until you love for your neighbor what you love for yourself. This is the Islam I learned in Jordan. Islam of kindness and mercy, not of madness and cruelty. Traditional Orthodox Islam, not modern fundamentalist Islam. The Islam of forgive and let live, not of attack and nitpick. The Islam of fundamental principles, usul in Arabic, not of fundamentalist details. The Islam of the holistic vision of the Quran and the Sunnah, and not the cherry picking of verses to suit a political agenda. This is the traditional Orthodox Islam. That is the faith of the vast majority of Muslims around the world. 1.8 billion good neighbors and good citizens who are helping build the future in Jordan and the Middle East, in the US and Asia, and Europe and beyond. And we are working on every continent to defend Islam against the malignant sub-minority who abuse our religion. And we do this not to please our friends, not to please the world, but to please God. And as long as there is life in our bodies and faith in our hearts, we will continue to do so, God willing, inshallah. And we are not alone. The great commandments to love God and love one's neighbor, as has been said this evening, are found again and again in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam and other faiths around the world. It is a profound message, calling every one of us to struggle to look beyond ourselves. And this outward insight is the source and hope of all coexistence. And when we talk about hope and coexistence, no issue is more important than Jerusalem. More than half of the world's people belong to religions that hold Jerusalem as a holy city: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. For Muslims, Jerusalem stands along with Mecca and Medina as one of Islam's three holiest places. And a special duty binds me and all Jordanians as Hashemite custodian of Jerusalem's Islamic and Christian holy sites. With its long multi-faith heritage, Jerusalem must be protected as a unifying city of peace. And I am tremendously grateful to the Templeton Prize for making it possible to further this work. A portion of the Templeton Prize will help renovate and restore religious sites in Jerusalem, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And the entire remaining sum is also being donated to humanitarian, interfaith, and intrafaith initiatives in Jordan and around the world. My friends, God says in the Quran, for those who say our Lord is God and then follow the straight path, there is no fear, nor shall they grieve. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, whoever believes in God and the last day, let him behave with excellence and virtue, ihsan, towards his neighbor. It is time to do all we can to maximize the good in our world and bring people together in understanding. But it begins with the struggle, the jihad within ourselves to be the best we can be. And it's been said that all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. But together, God willing, we can achieve something important. We can create the future of coexistence that humanity so desperately needs. Let us keep up the struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for your inspiring words. Ladies and gentlemen, in our main performance of the evening, we bring you a fusion of old and new. This is a reflection of the mosaic of our Jordan, home to some of the world's oldest communities, and the promising young society yearning for the future. With this blend of language and sound, we share with you an illustration of how we celebrate what is dearest to our hearts.
مزروع مجد وغار عالبرج العال وتمر خيال وسيوف تلالي وشمسك ما تغيب لا مالي ولا أولادي على حبك مالي حبيب وحدوا سيفك ما نبت في حشم بعض الورد إلا أنه لك شوكة ردت إلى الشرق الصبا نبت السيوف وحدوا سيفك ما نبت نبت السيوف وحدوا سيفك ما نبت.
As we end this evening, if you are so inclined, would you pause with me for a moment of prayer. God of all creation, we give thanks for the blessings of our varied cultures, nations, and faiths. As we share a common dream, homes and neighborhoods where children thrive, a beloved community where rich and poor alike live dignified and productive lives, churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples, where our deepest desire is to be of service to a hurting world. Holy One, enable us to leave this place to turn our hearts towards charity, our thoughts toward justice, and our hands toward the work of peace. Amen.
المنى يوم أحييت لنا نهضة تحفزنا تتسامى فوق هام الشهب يا مليك العرب لك من خير نبي شرف في النسب حدثت عنه بطون الكتب الشباب الأمجد جندك المجند عزمه لا يخمد فيه من معناك رمز الدأب يا مليك العرب لك من خير نبي شرف في النسب حدثت عنه بطون الكتب دمت نورا وهدى في البرايا سيدا هانئا ممجدا تحت آلامك مجد العرب يا مليك العرب لك من خير نبي شرف في النسب حدثت عنه بطون الكتب